This is the History of Portugal podcast with Brian Kirk.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Brian Kirk with Eat to My Own Beat, taking the road less traveled with another episode of History of Portugal podcast. This is episode number 102, and we're going to continue on with the Almoravid Dynasty. So we're going to talk a little bit about the origins of the history. The Berbers of the Maghreb in the early Middle Ages could be roughly classified into three major groups: the Zenata across the north, the Masmuda concentrated in central Morocco, and the Sanhaja clustered in the western part of the Sahara and the hills of the eastern Maghreb. The eastern Sanya included the Kutama Berbers, who had been the base of the Fatimid rise in the early 10th century, and the Zirid dynasty, who ruled Irifaqi as vassals of the Fatimids after they later moved to Egypt in 972. The Western Sanhaya were divided into several tribes: the Gozula and the Lamta in the Dra valley and the foothills of the Anti-Atlas range. Further south, encamped in the Western Sahara, were the Musafa and the Banu Warith, and most southerly of all, the Latuna and Gudala in littoral Mauritania down to the borderlands of the Senegal River. The Western Sanhaya had been converted to Islam sometime around the 9th century. They were subsequently united in the 10th century and, with the zeal of the new converts, launched several campaigns across the Sudanese pagan people of the sub-Saharan Africa under their king Tin Barutan ibn Usafashar. The Sanhana Lamtuna erected or captured the citadel of Adagohost, a critical stop on the trans-Saharan trade route. After the collapse of the Sanhaya Union, the Uragost passed over the Ghana Empire, and the trans-Saharan routes were taken over by the Zenata Maghraba of Sigilla Massa. The Magraha also exploited the disunion to dislodge the Sanhaya, Gazula, and Lamta out of their pasture lands in the Suz and Dra valleys. Around 1035, the Lamtuna chieftain Abu Adullah Muhammad ibn Tifat, alias Tarsina, tried to reunite the Sanhaya desert tribes, but his reign lasted less than 3 years. Around 1040, Yahya ibn Ibrahim, a chieftain of the Gudala and brother-in-law to the late Tarzina, went to pilgrimage to Mecca. On his return, he stopped by Karun in Ifriqa, where he met Abu Imran al-Fasi, a native of Fez and the jurist of the scholar of Sunni Maliki school. At this time, Ifriqa was in ferment. The Zirid ruler al-Mazuz Ma'iz ibn Badis was openly contemplating and breaking with the Shiite Fatimid overlords in Cairo, and the jurists of Karun were agitating him for him to do so. With the heady atmosphere, Yahya and Abu Imran fell into conversation on the state and the faith in their Western homelands, and Yahya expressed his disappointment at the lack of religious education and the negligence of Islamic law among the southern Sanhaya people. With Abu Imran's recommendation, Yahya ibn Abraham made his way to the Ribat of Wagag ibn Zelu in Suz Valley of southern Morocco to seek out a Maliki teacher for his people. Wagag assigned him one of his residents, Abdallah ibn Yassin. Abdallah ibn Yassin was a Gazula Berber and probably a convert rather than a born Muslim. His name can be read as son of Yassin, the title of the 36th surah of the Quran, suggesting he had obliterated his family past and was reborn of the holy book. Ibn Yassan certainly had an ardor of Puritan zealot. His creed was mainly characterized by rigid formalism and strict adherence to the dictates of the Quran and the Orthodox tradition. Chroniclers such as al-Bakri allege Ibn Yassan's learning was superficial. Ibn Yassan's initial meetings with the Godala people went poorly, as he had made more ardor than depth. Ibn Yassan's arguments were disputed by his audience. He responds to questioning with charges of apostasy and handed out harsh punishments for the slightest deviations. The Godala soon had enough, expelled him, and almost immediately after the death of the protector, Yahya ibn Aram, sometimes in the 1040s. Ibn Yassan, however, found a more favorable reception among the neighboring Lamtuna people. Probably sensing the useful organization of power of Ibn Yassan's pious fervor, the Lamtuna chieftain Yahya ibn Umar al-Lamtuni invited the man to preach to his people. The Lamtuna leaders, however, kept Ibn Yassin on careful leash, forging a more productive partnership between them, invoking stories of the early life of Muhammad. Ibn Yassin preached the conquest and the necessary addendum to the Islamification. That was not enough to merely adhere to God's law, but necessary to also destroy the opposition to it. In Ibn Yassin's ideology, anything and everything outside of Islamic law could be characterized as opposition. He identified tribalism, in particular, as an obstacle. He believed it was not enough to urge his audiences to put aside their blood loyalties and ethnic differences and embrace the equality of all Muslims under the sacred law. It was necessary to make them do so for the Lamtuna leadership. This new ideology dovetailed with their long desire to refound the Sanya Union and recover their lost dominions. In the early 1050s, the Lamtuna, under the joint leadership of Yahya ibn Umar and Abdallah ibn Yassin, soon calling themselves all the Almoravids, or Almoravids, set out a campaign to bring their neighbors over their cause. That's this week's episode. Next week's episode is Conquest, and we're going to talk about Northern Africa in the first part for this next episode, 103 next Friday. And keep checking back every Friday. We have new episodes of the History of Portugal podcast. So until next time, keep eating at your own beat, take the road less traveled, and have a great day.